say Crescent Lake is only 40 feet deep. Every map agrees. Every survey confirms it. Even the park rangers, when asked, will give the same answer with the same casual shrug. But if you stand at the northern dock at midnight, and if you lean just a little too far over the railing, you'll see something that shouldn't be there. Lights, not on the surface, not reflections, not boats. Lights deep below the water, far, far deeper than 40 feet. Tonight, he was going to find out why. The arrival. Elias Mercer arrived at Crescent Lake on the kind of evening that feels stored in the quiet spaces between seasons. Cool, unmoving air. Sky washed in soft blues. The kind of silence that gathers around you like folded hands. He parked his truck at the edge of the lakeshore campground, stepping out onto the gravel as a breeze hissed softly through the pines. The land smelled like sap and river stones, and the faint metallic scent of approaching night. You'd think an explorer like Elias, someone who'd spent years documenting forgotten places, would have seen everything by now. Abandoned quarries, collapsed mines, woodland ruins where the walls leaned toward each other like old men in a whisper. But Crescent Lake was different. He felt it immediately, as though the lake recognized him, like it had been waiting. He slung his pack over his shoulder and walked toward the water's edge. The shoreline curved around the lake like a broken horseshoe, dark trees crowding close, their reflections stretching across the water like long fingers. The surface was flat as glass, too flat. Even lakes this calm show texture ripples from insects, tiny pulses of wind. But Crescent Lake looked, frozen still, almost staged. Elias crouched and tapped the surface gently with 2 fingertips. The water moved, but reluctantly, as though something beneath it resisted. A soft hum drifted up from the depths. He lifted his head. There, beyond the center of the lake, a faint yellow glow, almost like a lantern swinging behind a window. He blinked, and the light faded. But he had seen it. He was sure of it. A reflection. But of what? There were no houses around the lake. No cabins. No boats. No campsites with lanterns bright enough to reach this far. And still, a window's glow had shimmered beneath the water. He stood, brushing dirt from his hands, and let the quiet settle in around him. When he breathed in, he tasted something old. Dust and pine, yes, but also stone dust. Basement air, like the lake was exhaling its history. The forgotten story. Locals didn't talk about Crescent Lake. Not much, anyway. When he'd stopped for gas in the nearest town, a place called Denthorn, he'd asked the old man at the counter what he knew about it. The man's eyebrows had climbed slowly. "You're not camping by the lake, are you?" Elias had nodded. The old man muttered, tightening a jar lid behind the counter. "People do that, I suppose. Anything wrong with it?" Elias had asked. "Ain't my place to say." The conversation ended there, but the man's uneasy silence spoke louder than any story. Still, Elias had done his research. Crescent Lake had swallowed a town once. Back in 1911, A torrential flood, one of those freak seasonal shifts that happen once every century, burst down the valley. The river rose 26 feet in 30 minutes. A wall of water ripped through the township of Merriwick, tearing houses from foundations and dragging the town straight into the basin where Crescent Lake now sits. Most towns leave behind ruins, foundations, skeletal remains of streets. But Merriwick didn't leave anything. The lake claimed it entirely. One died the paradox DPNS. He walked along the shoreline, boots sinking into soft mud. The lake stretched wide and circular, its edges feathered with reeds that shivered without wind. But the strangest part, the part he would remember later even more clearly than the lights, was the reflection. The sky was still blue overhead, but the lake did not reflect blue. It reflected a darker sky, bruised purple, speckled with stars. Stars that weren't in the sky above. He froze. His breath caught. The water showed night, hours before the sky itself would darken. Impossible, he whispered. He looked up. The real sky was still pale, streaked with late sunlight. He looked down. The lake showed constellations, not faint, not distorted. Clear, sharp stars in patterns he didn't recognize. A paradox. A quiet contradiction. He pulled his phone from his pocket and checked the time. 6:42 p.m. Sunset wouldn't be until 7:21. And yet, Crescent Lake had already turned to night. He watched the false stars glint for a long moment before the reflection shifted, and in the sky's place, something else appeared. A structure. A building beneath the surface. Elias knelt at the edge, narrowing his eyes. It looked like a house, the kind built in the early 1900s, with a peaked roof and a chimney jutting from one side. Glass windows, curtains, and behind one of them, the faint yellow glow of lantern light, the same glow he'd glimpsed earlier. He leaned closer. The house seemed far away, dozens of feet below, but the lake was only supposed to be 40 feet deep. 40 feet shouldn't allow full houses. Tall houses, town halls, steeples, and yet there, clear as a memory, he saw the steeple of a church, a tall one, its cross tilted slightly as though leaning into the water. He felt something tighten in his chest. Merriwick had not merely sunk, it had remained, preserved, waiting, breathing beneath the lake. And as he knelt there, mesmerized by the drowned town below, a soft vibration rippled beneath the surface. A hum, almost like a generator. No, like a bell. A ringing so low, it was more felt than heard. He closed his eyes. For a moment, he imagined he was standing in that church, hearing its ancient bell toll. When he opened his eyes, the reflection had changed again. Not a church, not a house, a street, long and straight, paved with bricks, lined with old lamps. And at the far end, someone stood. Elias jerked back. A figure, still silhouetted in the watery darkness, watching him. He blinked, heart hammering. The figure, the first night he set up camp near the shore. using his truck's cargo lights to guide him. The tent flapped gently as he anchored the stakes, though the air itself was unmoving. He brewed tea on a small portable burner, steam spiraling upward into the cooling night. The lake looked different now, even calmer, even stiller, but not empty. Lights pulsed faintly beneath the surface, like distant lamps lining a street. The yellow glow brightened, then dimmed, like breath. Elias sat on a log near the water, sipping his tea slowly. He felt watched, but not threatened. Not yet, just observed, as though the lake was deciding something. Night deepened around him. Crickets murmured in the reeds. A lone owl hooted from somewhere deeper in the trees, and the lake remained brighter below than above. He opened his journal, writing, "Crescent Lake's surface is behaving as a membrane, holding time above, leaking time below." He paused, tapping his pen thoughtfully. The submerged town shows activity. Lights, movement, impossible structures under the mapped depth. He closed the journal. Steam curled from his cup. Then he heard it, something soft, a whisper. At first he thought it was wind moving through the reeds, but the reeds were still. Then he thought it was insects, but the rhythm was too steady. Soft, slow, almost like a voice, a woman's maybe, far away, calling. He lifted his head. The lake was motionless, glass, but something had changed. Far out in the center, a ripple, small, sharp, like something had brushed the surface from below. Then another, and another. He rose quietly, stepping closer. A shape floated toward him, not on top of the water, but just beneath it. White, tattered fabric. He knelt at the edge again. The shape drifted nearer, drifting like a drowned dress. He reached out. The fabric snapped downward, yanked into the depths with sudden force. Elias stumbled back. The lake calmed instantly, as if nothing had disturbed it. A chill worked its way up his spine. He glanced around, half expecting someone to be watching him from the trees, but the forest was dark and undisturbed. The whispering started again. This time it was clearer. Not wind, not insects, a voice. A woman's voice, fragile as frost. "Help me." Elias froze. The voice came from below the surface. Not above, not around him. Below, his breath fogged in the cold air. A second voice followed it, deeper, wet-sounding. "Stay with us." He stepped backward, instinctively. Water lapped at the shore. Soft, inviting, almost expectant. He forced himself to breathe. He was an explorer. He had walked through collapse. The map THAT shouldn't exist. Trying to steady himself, Elias walked back to his truck and pulled out his old topographic lake map. He spread it across the hood, flicking on his headlamp. It showed exactly what he expected. Depth, 3843 ft. No major structures, no underwater features, no anomalies. Flat lake bed. He pulled out a second map, one he'd found in the university archives. An older map, dated 1909. This one showed Merriwick before the flood. He placed the two maps side by side. Something was wrong. The shoreline shape was identical between the two maps, but Marowak's street layout didn't match the lake's contour. It fit inside the lake, perfectly, as though the lake had grown around it, had swallowed it deliberately. He placed his finger on the church icon from the 1909 map, then traced downward onto the 2024 lake map. It matched. Same position, same angle. He marked it. Then he did the same with the school. Matched. The town hall matched. The central road matched. He stared at the overlay. It wasn't just a drowned town. It was preserved, exactly where it had stood. No shifting, no dragging, no collapse. As if the water had replaced the air in one perfect motion, leaving the town beneath like a photograph trapped under glass. He leaned back and exhaled slowly. Then something in the corner of the 1909 map caught his eye. A handwritten note, barely visible in the lamplight. He lifted the map closer. The ink was faint, faded to a rusty brown. Do not follow the bells. He frowned. Bells. No records mentioned bells. He traced the note with his thumb. The ink looked old, but not old enough. More like it had been written decades later. Maybe recently. Someone had touched this map. Someone who knew something. He folded the map carefully and slid it back into its sleeve. The night pressed in around him, thick with expectation. The first descent begins. He approached the shoreline again, curiosity outweighing caution. The lake looked darker now, not because the sky above had dimmed, but because the lake itself seemed to drink the remaining light. He crouched down, letting his fingers hover above the surface. The water vibrated subtly. A low hum, a resonance. He tilted his head. It sounded like voices overlapping. Too many to understand. He whispered, "What are you?" The water did not answer, but the reflection did. A glow, soft and warm, appeared beneath the depths. A lantern, a window. No, he realized with a shudder. It was the outline of a street lamp. Old, iron wrought, still lit. The kind used in early 1900s towns. A second lamp flickered to life. Then a third, a path of lights, glowing gently beneath the lake's surface, as though an entire street had awakened from sleep. As he watched, entranced, a shape appeared at the far end of the illuminated path. A silhouette, still, tall, human. It did not move. It only watched. Elias felt a pull, not physical. The lantern path grew brighter beneath the water. One by one, slowly, patiently, lighting the way down. The last lamp flickered weakly, as though something beside it leaned close, whispering against the glass. Elias swallowed hard. The figure at the end of the path lifted its head, and the lake rippled, softly, almost like it smiled. He whispered, "I need to see more," and the water seemed to answer, "Come deeper." And one night over the water, Elias stayed at the shoreline longer than he meant to. Not because he wasn't tired. He was. Exhaustion pulled at his shoulders, turning his limbs heavy, slowing his thoughts. But Crescent Lake had taken hold of his attention with a patient, quiet grip. as if the lake had wrapped its fingers around his curiosity, not to trap him, but to steady him. Across the surface, the underwater lanterns glowed in a long, perfect line. A ghost street, a path deep below the glassy water. The sky overhead had finally darkened, but even now, the reflection on the lake looked older than the real night sky, as if the water reflected a different century entirely. The distant silhouette he'd seen earlier no longer stood at the end of the lantern path. But Elias felt the memory of it, its stillness, its height, its patient posture, drifting around the edges of his thoughts. He stepped back from the shoreline and forced a breath into his lungs. He should rest. He would need a clear mind for what came next. But before going to his tent, he walked to the dock, the one jutting slightly over the lake's quiet surface. Its wooden planks creaked under his weight, each step echoing softly across the still water. Halfway down the dock, he stopped. The lake reflected him back, but not quite correctly. His reflection leaned forward more than he did, tilted its head slightly differently, blinking at a rhythm just a touch too slow. He held perfectly still. His reflection did the same. Almost. Its chest rose and fell in a gentler cycle, as though the reflection breathed a different air from far below. He stepped away. The reflection did not follow immediately. It lingered, head bowed, as if watching something beneath him, not watching him directly. Then, slowly, it slid back into sync. Elias backed off the dock. "Enough for tonight," he murmured. But as he walked toward the tent, the faint hum beneath the ground followed him, low, steady, like the deep vibration of something to dawn with no sunrise. He woke before sunrise, not because of noise. Crescent Lake made none, not because of light. His tent remained dim and colorless. He woke because the air changed, colder, denser, as though something had displaced the atmosphere around him. He sat up slowly, listening. No birds, no insects, nothing. The world outside held its breath. Elias unzipped the tent and stepped outside. The sky was the soft gray of early morning, but Crescent Lake did not match it. The lake was still dark, still reflecting stars that no longer hovered above him. The reflection showed a sky hours older, a night that should have already passed. He knelt by the water. Behind the false constellations, the underwater town appeared clearer now. He saw the street more distinctly. Brick roads, shop fronts with wooden window frames, a line of old iron lampposts still burning with impossible yellow light. This time, there was no figure waiting at the end of the lantern path. Just stillness, but stillness with intent. He whispered, "Why are you awake before the sun?" The water trembled in answer. Just once, subtle like a pulse. 3, the boat, he decided. By late morning, he would be on the water. He needed to see the submerged street from above, not just through shifting reflections. He unpacked his inflatable kayak, quiet, lightweight, no engine. Perfect for slipping across undisturbed water. He inflated it manually, each pump of air muted by the thick stillness around him. When he finished, he loaded the essentials: waterproof camera, headlamp, journal, rope, portable sonar unit. The sonar wasn't new. It had been through caves and mine shafts and flooded tunnels with him. But here, it felt almost intrusive. A tool meant for ordinary lakes, not this place that followed rules older than mapping and older than time. Still, he brought it. Curiosity was a stronger compass than caution. He slid the kayak into the water. It hardly made a ripple. He pushed off from the shore, settling into the seat as the kayak drifted toward the lake's center. The surface looked calm. Too calm. The feeling was like gliding across a sheet of darkened glass, as though the boat hovered over a depth that wasn't liquid at all, but suspended space. Elias dipped the paddle. The lake resisted, not strongly, not enough to alarm, but enough for him to notice the thickness. Water shouldn't behave like this. He paddled forward anyway. Each stroke carried him closer to the submerged street. The lanterns below appeared clearer now, glowing in a straight, perfect row. He drifted above the first one. The lantern wasn't broken or corroded by a century underwater. Its paint was intact, its glass unclouded, its flame flickering softly with no source of fuel. He held his breath. Then he leaned over and activated the sonar. The screen flickered, beeped, calibrated. He waited. Then the reading came. Depth, 137 FT. Elias blinked. He checked the calibration, reset it, ran it again. Depth, 138 FT. He looked around the calm lake. Crescent Lake measured 40 feet deep in every official document. 40, not 138. He pointed the sonar at the lantern itself. The device sent a soft pulse through the water. The lantern glowed beneath him. The reading returned. Object depth, 102 FT. He whispered it aloud. 102 feet. His pulse quickened. His breath became slow. The air around him felt heavier. This wasn't a simple anomaly. This wasn't a misread for the unmarked house. A shadow emerged beneath him. Not one house, but the outline of several. Faint rooftops, chimneys, porch beams, laundry lines. As if someone had walked out of one of those old houses an hour ago and set down a basket of clothes, not yet wet. Elias tilted the sonar again. Depth fluctuated. 92 FT, 118 FT, 143 FT, 101 FT. It pulsed like a heartbeat. The deeper he paddled, the more detailed the town became. Then he saw the house. The one that wasn't on the 1909 map. A small cottage with a pitched roof and dark shutters, except its door was half open, and a warm glow spilled from within, underwater. A glow bright enough for him to see the outline of furniture through the window. He drifted closer. The boat cast a soft shadow on the water's skin. As he leaned over the edge, something inside the house moved. A shape. Slow, careful. The light flickered. He held perfectly still. Another movement. Someone or something walked past the cottage window underwater, leaving a blurred silhouette. He froze, tightening his grip on the kayak's rim. The water beneath him shimmered, and the cottage window's curtain fluttered. Underwater. A curtain, moving, not drifting passively like cloth in water. Fluttering, as if brushed by air. Elia's breath caught. The cottage had air pockets. Impossible, intact, century-old air pockets. He dipped his hand toward the surface above it. The water was warmer here. Almost, breathing warm air upward. He whispered, "There shouldn't be air down there." The lake whispered back, a faint ripple beneath his palm. 5 children's footprints. He paddled further, deeper into Crescent Lake Center. More structures came into view. A schoolhouse, a long brick building, a row of wooden benches outside, the schoolyard gate still attached to its hinges. He floated above the schoolhouse roof, peering down. Inside, desks sat in rows. Books, real books, rested on wooden tables. Some spilled open as if abandoned mid-lesson. Then something else caught his eye. In front of the schoolhouse door, in the soft silt, lay small footprints. Tiny, barefoot, running in looping patterns. Children's footprints. He leaned closer. The toes pointed in different directions, some toward the schoolhouse, some away from it. And the most chilling part, the prints were dry, perfect, as if a group of children had run through soft mud 5 minutes ago. His chest tightened. If this was a preserved town, the silt should have smoothed the footprints by now. The water should have erased them, but these remained sharp. New. He swallowed hard. A faint sound drifted upward. A giggle, light, soft, far below the water. He jerked. The giggle returned. 6 the long street. He reached the heart of the submerged town. The brick street he'd seen reflected the night before stretched below him in perfect alignment. Street lamps glowed beneath the water in soft, steady intervals. The iron post nearest to him flickered repeatedly, like a signal. Elias hovered above it, watching. The flickering grew rhythmic. 3 short blinks. A pause, 3 long. A pause, 3 short. His breath stopped. This wasn't random. This was Morse code. SOS. He sat there, boat drifting quietly. Someone is down there, he whispered to the lake. Or the lake wanted him to think so. He studied the street beneath. Shadows shifted in alleyways. Doors hung slightly open. It felt like a town waiting to be walked again. But that wasn't what held his attention next. At the far end of the street, the silhouette returned. He inhaled sharply. Tall, still, standing near the submerged town hall, facing him, watching him. It did not move. The lamps around it dimmed slightly, as though the figure's presence fed on their light. Elias whispered, "Who are you?" His voice sounded small, swallowed by water and cold, heavy air. The figure tilted its head, the motion slow and deliberate. Lanterns flickered. Then, with a sound like distant metal bending under pressure, the nearest street lamp bent slightly toward Elias, as if pointing him toward the town hall. He felt the meaning, not in words, but in the pull of the water. It was an invitation, a request. Come closer, come deeper. 7. The cellar door. He paddled, drawn forward by a mix of dread and curiosity. The town hall came into clearer view. A large structure with tall columns and a central staircase leading down into the lake bed. The building's front doors hung open, water drifting in and out of the hollow entrance. Beneath the staircase, barely visible, a cellar door sat half open. Warm air bubbled from beneath it. Real air. A slow rise of tiny shimmering bubbles that broke against the lake's surface. Air trapped for over a century. Not decayed, not consumed. He reached the deepest part of the lake. The sonar shrieked quietly before glitching out entirely. The screen went black. It refused to reboot. Elias exhaled through his teeth. He leaned out of the kayak, gripping its rim with one hand, and lowered his other hand toward the surface. Just before his fingertips touched the water above the cellar, the figure vanished, not drifted away, not stepped aside, vanished, as if the lake had blinked and erased it. He held still. The cellar door below shifted, just slightly, as if someone had touched it from the other side. A soft pulse rippled upward. Then a voice, not a whisper, not broken, but clear, a woman's voice, low and steady, echoing through the water like a memory resurfacing. We're still here. Elias tensed. He hovered over the cellar. The lanterns brightened. The house lights glowed. The street deepened beneath him like an open throat. The lake was no longer silent. It was breathing, inviting, waiting. He felt a warmth rise from below, a warmth that did not belong in cold water. He whispered to himself, I have to see what's inside. The surface beneath him rippled softly, almost approvingly, as though Crescent Lake had been waiting years for him to say those exact words. One, crossing the membrane, Elias didn't enter the water yet. He sat frozen above the cellar door, the kayak drifting in lazy circles as the lake exhaled warm bubbles from below. The warmth felt unnatural, like heat rising from a living throat, not a flooded building. He extended his hand again, letting his fingertips skim the surface. The sensation startled him. The water above the cellar wasn't just warm. It was thin, not watery, not liquid, thin, like warm breath pressed against the skin. He whispered, the surface is changing. The lake answered with a slow ripple. A soft distortion spread outward from beneath the kayak, widening into a perfect circle. The lanterns below flickered in rhythmic pulses, almost like they were signaling something or preparing. The water cleared further. He could see into the cellar now. The air pocket flickered like a dim candle in an old room, revealing the faint outline of stairs, descending brick steps leading into the dark interior of a preserved building. Elias leaned closer. The cellar wasn't filled with water. It was filled with air. The steps were visible, benches, shelves, boxes stacked neatly along the walls, and something else, a chalkboard, old, cracked, but readable, lines scratched across it in looping white symbols. Not English, not math, something older. He paddled closer, mesmerized. That's when he saw it. The chalk moved, not a lot to the first touch. He lowered his hand deeper. The surface tension broke, but there was no splash, no coldness, no wetness. Instead, the water felt like fabric, soft, warm, thin. His fingers passed through it effortlessly, as if dipping through a curtain of warm mist rather than into a lake. A strange relief washed through him. He could breathe here. He didn't know how he knew, but he knew. The cellar wasn't underwater. The lake above it only looked like water, a membrane, a boundary, a separation between two worlds. Suddenly, a vibration trembled through the kayak, gentle, rhythmic, like fingertips tapping on the hull. Tap, tap, tap. He jerked upright. The tapping stopped, then resumed. Tap, 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 slow, deliberate, from beneath him, like knuckles on a door. Elias swallowed. "You want me to come down?" he whispered to the lake. A soft ripple answered. The lanterns grew brighter, illuminating the submerged street like a path of stars. Down in the cellar, the chalk moved again, this time scrawling a new curve, forming a new symbol. Elias steadied himself. He holstered the sonar, locked the paddle, strapped his camera to his chest. Then he placed both hands on the surface, above the cellar, and pushed through. His arms slipped into the warm membrane with impossible ease, as though he were moving through velvet. The water didn't fight him, didn't drag him. It welcomed him, pulled gently, and then, with one single movement, Elias slipped beneath Crescent Lake 3. Inside the cellar, he fell, but not far. His body passed through the warm veil, landing with a soft thud on solid ground. Air, real air, he gasped. The cellar air smelled faintly of old paper and dust, dry, breathable, untouched by water. He stood slowly. The cellar was perfectly intact. Wooden beams, shelf units lining the walls, crates stacked in neat columns, a kerosene lamp resting on a low table. Everything preserved, as if this room had been sealed yesterday. Above him, there was no water. Instead, the ceiling looked like dim glass, reflecting the lake's surface from below, shimmering faintly with distorted motion, as if the lake clung to the ceiling like a second skin. He stared upward. From the outside, the cellar should have been submerged beneath 100 feet of icy water. But here, he reached up. His fingers brushed the underside of the water membrane, rolling like warm gel. He could see his kayak above him, floating over the surface of this reversed space. Reality was wrong here. Bent, folded, inverted. He lowered his hand. Something in the corner flickered. The chalkboard. Its symbols glowed faintly soft, pulsing light illuminating the cellar with a pale blue hue. He stepped closer. The writing wasn't random. It was a message, not in English, but in a script that repeated certain shapes enough for Elias to feel meaning tug at him like a slow whisper. A semicircle, 3 vertical lines, a pair of mirrored curves, over and over. You've seen patterns like this. The narrator murmurs gently, as if guiding the listener into sleep. Not in language, but in architecture, in symmetry, in places meant to be remembered long after people leave. Elias reached out. His hand hovered inches above the chalk's faint glow. The room warmed. The glow intensified, and then the symbols rearranged. Not all at once, not violently, just a soft shifting, like letters responding to his presence. The lines slid, curves softened, shapes rearranged in slow motion, until they formed something new, something legible, in English. The words shone faintly. You came back. Elias' breath left his chest in a slow pulse. What do you mean? The chalk trembled. A small line drew itself beneath the message, just a short stroke, almost encouraging. Then another word formed. Again, Elias stumbled back. I've never been here, but the room disagreed. A soft rustling came from the shelves. He turned. A journal sat on the top shelf, brown leather, cracked, dusty. His fingers shook as he reached for it. He blew dust from the cover. An initial was carved into the leather. A single letter. E, his initial. He opened it. The first page was blank. The second, blank the third. A faint indentation, as if something had once been written there long ago. But only one thing remained visible. An imprint. A groove in the paper. The shape of handwriting so old it had eroded. He held the page closer to the faint cellar light. The groove spelled a familiar name. His own. Elias Mercer. He whispered it aloud. The cellar hummed in response, deep, reassuring, as though the room itself recognized his voice. He touched the next page. More grooves. More for the door beyond the stairs. There were stairs leading up, and stairs leading deeper. The ones leading up would take him back to the outside world, if the lake allowed it. The ones leading deeper. He stepped toward the deeper stairs. Each footfall echoed softly. The air grew warmer. The lights from the chalkboard dimmed behind him. The cellar door at the bottom of the stairs wasn't wooden. It was iron, heavy, rusted, but intact. He placed his palm against it. A low thrum pulsed through the metal like a dormant heartbeat. He pushed. The door opened silently, and what he found beyond didn't make sense. It was a hallway, dry, lit by soft, flickering oil lamps mounted on the walls. And the hallway wasn't flooded, wasn't rotting, wasn't abandoned. It looked freshly used. Footprints, wet footprints, tracked along the wooden floor. Small ones, medium ones, boot prints, bare feet, dozens of them, all leading deeper into the corridor. The air smelled different here. Warm, sweet, something like honeysuckle and rain-soaked soil. He followed the footprints. The corridor opened into a small lobby. A wooden sign hung above the entrance to a larger room. When Elias raised his head to read it, the breath left his lungs. The sign said, Marrowick Town Hall. Lower West Wing, he whispered. This place shouldn't exist anymore. The building felt alive. Quietly, patiently, like a person waiting for a visitor who took too long to return. This wing of the town hall wasn't preserved. It was maintained. The oil lamps burned with golden flames, real flames, not illusions, and soft voices whispered beyond the next doorway. He stepped closer. The voices grew clearer, not threatening, not frantic, calm, conversational, like people in another room talking in low tones. He forced himself to keep breathing slowly. He put his hand on the doorframe, and then the voices stopped. Instantly, as though they all turned their heads toward the door in the same moment. A hush fell, heavy, expectant, aware. Elias whispered, "Is someone there?" The silence deepened. Then a single sound emerged, a slow chair scrape, wood grinding softly across wood. Someone stood up. Footsteps approached the door. Measured, unhurried. Elias froze. The footsteps reached the other side and stopped. Only a thin wooden door separated him from whoever or whatever was inside. The handle turned, but the door did not open. Instead, something slipped beneath it. A note, thin, folded. It slid onto the floor by his feet. He stared at it for a long moment before picking it up. His hands trembled. He unfolded it. The handwriting inside was small, neat, and unmistakably human. The note said, "We know why you're back." He swallowed hard, folded the note, then leaned down to look beneath the doorframe. His breath stilled. Feet stood on the other side. Bare feet, dozens of them. Small, medium, large, all facing the door, all waiting. He backed away slowly. The feet did not move. He backed further. The lights dimmed. A low hum filled the corridor, an ancient vibration that pressed against his ribs and spine. From behind the door, a woman's voice whispered, "He's not ready yet." Another answered, "But he remembers." A child's voice giggled softly. Elias turned and hurried quietly toward the corridor he came from. His heartbeat echoed in his ears. The cellar air shifted behind him, warm, pulsing. The voices didn't follow. They didn't need to. They knew he'd return. The lake knew it. He knew it. He reached the stairs back to the cellar. As he stepped onto the first stair, the chalkboard flared with pale blue light. New text had appeared. 4 words, glowing faintly. "This time you stay." He stared at the message. A shiver ran through him, not of fear, but of recognition. The cellar remembered him. The town remembered him. The lake remembered him. But he still did not remember them. He stepped forward, hand trembling, voice barely a whisper. "What happened last time?" The chalk wrote one final line. Slow, elegant, inevitable. "Ask her." Elias whispered, "Ask who?" A soft voice answered behind him, a quiet tone close to his ear, shaped from warm breath and memory. "Me." He turned and saw a shadow move at the edge of the cellar doorway. Not a figure, not a reflection. Something in between, something blending with the air. but shaped like a woman, as if someone from the old town was stepping slowly back into her form. Her presence felt familiar, like she had spoken to him before, like she had guided him once. The water pressed against the rotting boards beneath their feet, pulsing in a rhythm too steady to be natural movement. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. The drowned town had a heartbeat. The woman looked down at the floor. It's been waiting a long time. Elias swallowed hard. What is? Her eyes returned to him. What you forgot. His pulse quickened. I didn't forget anything. You forgot me, she whispered. Elias' chest tightened painfully. This is wrong, he said, shaking his head. This whole place, this town, it shouldn't be here. People said it was flooded decades ago. No one mentioned. They wouldn't. Her voice softened. It isn't a place meant to be spoken of. The heartbeat below the house grew louder. Ba-dum, ba-dum. It felt like the entire drowned structure, inhaled with each throb, exhaling silt, releasing old air that smelled faintly metallic. This lake holds what people leave behind, she murmured. And you left more than anyone. Elias stared at her, his heart pounding in his throat. Why did I leave? Her expression tightened with sadness. A deep sadness, the kind that couldn't be faked. You didn't want to, she said softly, but they made you. Who? She nodded toward the broken doorway leading deeper into the submerged house, toward a narrow hall that descended downward at a soft angle, deeper into the town beneath the water, toward the heartbeat. Elias' body went cold. No, he whispered. I'm not going down there. You already have, she replied. His breathing hitched. When you were 8, Elias froze. His mouth fell open slightly, but no sound came out. The woman drifted closer, almost touching him. You don't remember the night you fell into the lake, Elias, when they pulled you out, when you stopped breathing for a moment too long. Elias' vision spun. He remembered a flash of something cold, a sensation of sinking, a blurry shape reaching toward him beneath the water, his mother screaming, hands gripping his shoulders, a voice saying, "He's not responding." The woman pressed her palm against his chest, right over his heart. You were down here, she whispered. With me. Elias staggered away from her, clutching the wall. No, I was unconscious. I almost drowned. That's all. Her head tilted again. That soft, sorrowful tilt. You weren't unconscious, she said gently. You just weren't in the world above. Elias felt something break loose in his chest. Stop talking. This isn't real. It's the only real thing you've been avoiding. The house groaned again, this time louder, the wood swelling with pressure. More water spilled through the warped planks of the hall ahead. The heartbeat quickened. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. The woman looked toward the hall. It wants you to remember. Elias shook. I don't want to go deeper. Her eyes softened. That's why it called you back. Elias froze. What? The lake didn't choose me, she murmured. It chose you, the moment you touched its floorboards as a child. You heard it before you were awake enough to understand. Elias swallowed. What do you mean, touched? You pressed your hand to the bottom, she said. of the lake, of the doorway. The hall deepened as they looked at it. Water trickled from its edges like tears. You touched the threshold that connects the upper world and the lower one. Elias felt faint. His breathing staggered. I don't remember. That's because it asked if you wanted to forget, she whispered, voice trembling. And you said yes. Elias' spine chilled. He stared at her. You knew me, he whispered. Yes. You knew me when I was a child. Yes. And I came down here. Yes. In this house. A pause. No, she said softly. You came to my house. Elias stepped forward, desperation quivering in his voice. Who were you? But she only stepped back toward the hall. We don't have time. The lake is waking. The heartbeat grew faster, deeper, more insistent. The house creaked with pressure, like something enormous was shifting beneath it. It's remembering you, she said, and it will not stop. Elias shook his head. I never asked it to remember me. That doesn't matter. You touched the threshold. You crossed the line a human shouldn't cross. Her voice softened. But you didn't cross alone. Elias froze. What does that mean? She lifted her hand, palm trembling. You were holding mine. Elias' breath caught. His entire body went numb. He stared at her. No, that's not possible. I didn't know you. I don't know you. You forgot me once, she whispered. You can forget me again. The words hit him like a punch. She stepped fully into the flooded hall. Elias, she said softly. He didn't move. Come with me. You must see what waits below. He shook violently. No, 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 no. She paused. Then she whispered the exact sentence that collapsed something inside him. You promised not to leave me again. Elias' knees nearly buckled beneath him. His mind reeled. He tasted salt water in his mouth, memory or imagination. He didn't know. When did I say that? He murmured, barely breathing. The night you died, she whispered. And then the heartbeat stopped. The water went still. The house held its breath. And something massive shifted beneath the floor. The floor shifted beneath Elias' feet. Not enough to knock him over, just enough to make it clear that the foundations of the drowned house were not entirely still. The silence after the heartbeat was worse than the pounding had ever been. Too complete, too absolute, like the lake was holding its breath. Elias stared at the woman standing in the doorway of the deep hall, her face dimly lit by the faint glow filtering through the warped boards. His voice finally broke free, quiet and afraid. I died. She looked at him with such sorrow that for a moment he couldn't breathe. You were 8, she whispered. You slipped. You hit your head on a submerged beam. You stopped moving. I remember falling, Elias said, pressing his fingers to his temple as if he could scrape the memory out. I remember cold. Someone pulling me up, people shouting, my mother crying. Yes, she said softly. That happened. So I didn't die. You did, she said gently. Just not long enough. Elias' stomach tightened. The house moaned, timbers stretching with deep-set tension. The hall that led deeper into the house seemed to breathe again, not with water, but with anticipation. She stepped closer. You were gone for nearly 4 minutes, she whispered. They pulled you out, but you didn't come back. He shook his head. No, I was unconscious, almost drowned. You crossed the threshold. Elia's knees weakened. She reached toward him, but didn't touch him. Her fingers hovered inches from his, trembling like she was afraid he'd recoil. You came into my house, she said. You sat beside me on the floor. You said you weren't afraid of the dark. You said you'd stay with me. Her voice shook. And you held my hand when the lake asked if you wanted to forget. Elia's pulse hammered. He remembered a girl's voice echoing underwater, an old wooden room that smelled of mold and dust. A whistle in his hand, yellow, plastic, cheap. A soft hand gripping his tightly. His breath hitched. No, he whispered. No, that's not possible. I imagined things. Children hallucinate when they drown. You didn't imagine me, she said softly. You didn't imagine any of it. He took another step back until his spine pressed into the aged plank wall. Why don't I remember you? He whispered. She swallowed hard. Because I asked the lake to let you forget. Elias froze. I what? I didn't want you to stay here, she said. You were a child. You had a life above. You had a family. You had a world waiting for you. Her voice grew faint, crumbling like something ancient. I didn't. Elias' breath caught. What happened to you? He asked gently. The woman turned her head slightly, as though listening to something below the house. The lake's silence pulsed. My family lived here, she whispered. Before the flood, before Crescent became a lake. Elias' eyes widened. You lived in the town. Yes, you drowned. The woman closed her eyes. Everyone did. The water pulsed once. Quiet, slow, deep. They told us the flooding would be controlled, she said. That the new dam would rise slowly. That we'd have time. But the rain came early. The gates failed. The warnings didn't reach us. Her eyes glistened as she looked at him again. We woke to water, already halfway up the stairs. Elias felt sick. I'm sorry, he whispered, but the words felt too small. Don't be, she murmured. I've had a long time to understand what happened, a long time to understand what I became. What you became? Elias whispered. She nodded. The lake doesn't let go of those it holds, she said. It remembers us, keeps us. Not as ghosts, but as impressions. Patterns, echoes. Her voice softened, like a rippled reflection that never fades. Elias' chest hurt. So you're not a spirit, he said. You're a memory, she whispered. A memory with a voice. The lake trembled below them. A deep, resonant pulse that made the floorboards shift. She looked down toward the dark hall again. It's waking. It knows you're here. Why does it care? Elias asked sharply. Why does the lake want me? It doesn't want you, she whispered. It wants the promise you broke. His stomach twisted. What promise? Her face crumpled with sadness. The one you don't remember, she said. He stared at her silently. You promised, she whispered, that if you forgot me, you would come back. The words hit him with the weight of submerged stone. And you forgot me, she said. So it called you back. Elias shook his head violently. I didn't hear anything. You heard something, she said gently. You heard a restlessness, a need, a pull, something tugging at you. Every time you thought of the lake, Elias froze. He had felt something. The day he arrived, even months before, small moments where sleep became uneasy when water was mentioned, a dull ache in his chest when he saw lakes in photographs. He thought it was stress. It was. It wasn't me calling you, she said. It was the threshold. He sank to his knees in the shallow water, pooling on the warped floor. His hands trembled against the boards. What do I do? He whispered. You have to remember. Her voice was not a command, but a plea. No, Elias whispered. I don't want to remember. Whatever this is, whatever happened, it's too big. It scares me. Her expression softened. It scared me too. He lifted his eyes to hers. You remember everything? He asked. She nodded. Do you wish you did? She hesitated for a long time. Then, no. Silence deepened. The water stilled. Even the faint movement of light seemed to pause. She knelt down in front of him, their faces level. You're afraid of the dark below the floorboards, she whispered. But you don't have to be. Not this time. The house groaned, a long lament of old wood giving way. A plank beneath the hall cracked sharply. Elias flinched. It's calling, she whispered. You have to go down. No, Elias breathed. Not alone. Her eyes widened slightly. Her voice softened into something warm, hopeful. You don't have to go alone. She extended her hand. Palm open, thin fingers trembling, not demanding, not commanding, offering. Elias stared at her hand for a long, silent moment, the water rippling gently between them, the air thick with sleep horror stillness. He lifted his hand slowly, paused, and then he took hers. The water surged. The heartbeat returned, loud, deep, shaking the entire drowned house. Beatum, beatum, beatum. The hall lit faintly from below, as if something deep in the drowned town was glowing, awakening. Her grip tightened. Don't let go, she whispered. I won't, he said, barely breathing. Together, they stepped into the flooded hallway. The floor angled downward. The water climbed their legs, then their waists, then their chests. Elias trembled, memories pounding at the locked door of his mind. This, she whispered, is where it began. Elias stared at the blackness beyond the doorway. So complete it looked like a wound in the water. His grip tightened on her hand. I'm scared. I know, she said. Will I remember everything? He whispered. She squeezed his hand gently. Yes. What if I don't want to? You do, she said softly. Or you wouldn't have come. He shook. If I go through, what happens? The woman leaned closer, her voice a trembling whisper. You'll remember who I am to you. His heart stopped. He stared at her desperately. Tell me now. Her eyes shined with pain. I can't, she whispered. If I say it, the lake will take me from you again. What does that mean? It will silence my memory. Elias felt cold. Her voice trembled. It only allows the truth if you see it. He swallowed hard. Will you stay with me? Her eyes grew soft. I never left. The heartbeat thundered. The doorway widened. Or the water pulled them. He couldn't tell. The woman's fingers entwined with his. Elias, she whispered. You once promised you wouldn't leave me alone. He nodded, tears rising. I won't, not this time. She smiled, small, breaking, hopeful. Then come, she whispered, and together they stepped through the doorway. The world dropped away, not like sinking, like falling upward through water that became air, then memory, then something that felt like time bending inward. Elias gasped as images slammed into him. A small living room lit by lanterns. A girl laughing. A yellow whistle hanging from her wrist. Their hands touching, wood swollen by floodwaters. A voice whispering in the dark. Stay with me until I'm not afraid. A little boy's voice whispering back. I won't leave you. A rush of water. A scream. A final breath. A girl's small fingers gripping his hand in the darkness below the lake. Then, light, soft, golden, sad, the memory settled into him like a returning breath. He looked at the woman beside him, her face, her eyes, her smile. I know you, he whispered, voice breaking. She nodded slowly. Tears slipped down her cheeks, though they dissolved into water before falling. You were the girl, Elias breathed. The one in the lantern house. The one who saved me. The one I promised. She nodded again, covering her trembling lips, to come back for. And then the lake stilled completely. It was listening. Elias took her hands in his, holding them tight. I'm here, he whispered. I came back. She sobbed softly, the sound like ripples, like water finding the shore. I remembered you, he whispered. Her face broke into a trembling smile. You remembered, she echoed. Then the water pulsed once more, not violently, not painfully, but like a sigh, like a satisfied exhale. The drowned town settled, the heartbeat faded, the pressure eased. The lake released them. Light returned, warm, gentle, dreamlike. The woman's form flickered slightly, her edges losing definition. Elias' breath hitched. No, wait, what's happening to you? She shook her head, smiling sadly. The memory can only stay as long as the forgetting does. Fear tightened his chest. No, please stay. You remembered me, she whispered. That means the lake no longer needs to keep me. Her hand trembled in his. And I no longer need to keep you. No, Elias breathed, voice cracking. Don't go, please. She cupped his cheek one last time. You didn't leave me alone, she whispered. And now, I don't have to hold you here anymore. A single tear drifted from her chin. You kept your promise. Her form shimmered like a reflection, then softened, then slowly dissolved into the warm, rising light. Thank you, Elias, her fading voice whispered. Live. And then she was gone. The water released him fully, lifting him gently upward. Light surrounded him. Warmth embraced him. The drowned house crumbled into soft brightness, and Elias felt himself rising. Slowly, peacefully, like sleep finally embracing a restless mind. He awoke on shore, the morning sun warming his face, his clothes damp, not soaked, his lungs full of air. Birds chirped somewhere near the tree line. Crescent Lake was impossibly, perfectly calm. The boat drifted a few feet away, gently rocking. Elias sat up slowly. His body was light, his mind clearer than it had ever been. He looked at the lake's surface. No ripples, no heartbeat, no sound. But he whispered softly into the still air, "I remembered you." The lake shimmered, just once, just enough. Elias closed his eyes, letting the warmth of dawn settle into him. He felt no fear, no darkness, no tugging at his chest. Just peace, just memory, just release. As Elias stood and looked out across Crescent Lake, a single yellow object washed against the shore at his feet, a small, sun-bleached plastic whistle. He picked it up gently, held it in both hands, and whispered, "I won't forget." Then he walked toward the rising sun, the lake quiet behind him.